Rosa was rinsing fresh produce at her market stand when a few drops of dirty water accidentally splashed onto the white pants of a young woman passing by. The woman stopped dead in her tracks, her expensive sunglasses reflecting nothing but contempt. She stared at the tiny spot on her clothing as if the world had just ended right there in front of her. The spot was no bigger than a thumbprint, yet she reacted as though her entire outfit had been destroyed beyond repair. "Are you out of your mind?" she screamed at Rosa. "You stupid old hag! Can't you see where you're throwing your filthy water?" Without warning, she kicked Rosa hard, sending the elderly woman tumbling backward into a muddy pool. Rosa's back slammed against a plastic crate with a sickening thud. The young woman smiled cruelly, her dark burgundy lipstick making her expression even more vicious. "Pathetic countrywoman," she sneered, looking down at Rosa struggling in the dirty water. "Even when you're just selling greens, you manage to disgust everyone around you. People like you should stay hidden where nobody has to see you." But she wasn't finished. With another brutal kick, she sent Rosa's entire stand crashing to the ground. Lettuce, tomatoes, and cabbage rolled into the filth, mixing with mud and humiliation. Fresh carrots that Rosa had carefully washed that morning now lay scattered across the wet pavement. The stench of dirt mingled with the pain visible in Rosa's weary eyes. Every vegetable she had spent hours preparing was now ruined, destroyed in seconds by someone's cruelty. Everyone in the marketplace stood frozen, watching in shock and disbelief at what they were witnessing. They all knew Rosa wasn't some struggling vendor anymore. She was the mother of a young millionaire who was transforming their nation's economy. But Rosa never boasted about it because money had never made her forget the place that once kept her and her son from starving. She remembered every single day when this marketplace was her only source of survival. Other sellers rushed over to help her stand, offering their hands and their concern, but she simply shook her head, her voice shaking yet filled with quiet strength that came from years of enduring hardship. "Expensive clothing doesn't make someone a good person," Rosa said softly, wiping the mud from her face with the back of her hand. "A beautiful appearance means nothing without a beautiful heart. You can wear the finest fabrics in the world, but if your soul is ugly, you'll always be poor. You're about to hear a story that's making people everywhere reconsider what it truly means to have class. This isn't just another tale about rich versus poor. This is about character, dignity, and the lessons life teaches those who think wealth makes them superior." "Where are you joining us from?" "Maybe Atlanta, Chicago, Houston, Miami, Seattle, or perhaps Manchester, Sydney, Dubai, Toronto, Paris, or Mumbai. Tell us in the comments below. Hit that like button to help spread this important message to everyone who needs to hear it. Share this with anyone who needs to remember that kindness matters more than money. Never judge someone when you know absolutely nothing about their life, their struggles, or their story. Make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss stories that actually matter and touch hearts around the world. Stay until the very end to find out who the truly impoverished person really is in this tale. Because sometimes being poor has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with your character, your compassion, and your humanity. Rosa leaned against the weathered brick wall behind the marketplace, still catching her breath from her fall. Her clothes were soaked with dirty water, and her body ached from hitting the ground so hard. Yet her eyes remained peaceful, completely unaffected by the shame she'd just experienced. There was a calmness in her expression that spoke of someone who had survived far worse than this moment. People looked at her with both sympathy and respect because they understood that beneath those wrinkles and rough hands was a life story few could comprehend. They knew her journey, her sacrifices, and the incredible transformation her life had undergone. Years ago, Rosa lived in a cramped tin shack in the poorest part of town. The roof leaked when it rained, and the walls were so thin you could hear everything happening outside. Her husband died young in a workplace accident, leaving her completely alone to raise their boy, Marcus, with the meager income she made selling produce at the market. She always told people, "These vegetables might seem small, but they represent the hope that feeds my child and helps him grow strong. Every single one of these greens is a prayer for his future." Every single morning she would load up her baskets of vegetables and walk nearly 12 kilometers before dawn to catch the early shoppers. Her feet would blister and ache, but she never complained. On cold, rainy mornings her fingers would turn purple from the chill, and her joints would stiffen until she could barely move them. Still, she smiled as long as Marcus went to sleep with food in his belly and woke up able to attend school like other kids. She wanted him to have opportunities she never had, to dream bigger than she ever could. Marcus didn't just grow up on meals. He grew up on the faith his mother planted deep inside him, watering it with her words every single day. "Work hard in your studies to escape poverty," she'd tell him while they ate their simple dinners by candlelight. "But never ever look down on poor people. Remember where you came from. Remember that being poor doesn't mean being worthless. Respect everyone, no matter what they do for a living." Those words became a burning motivation in his heart, a compass that would guide him throughout his entire life. That skinny boy who used to help his mother arrange vegetables, who would stand at the market stall for hours just to keep her company, grew into one of the youngest and wealthiest business owners in the entire country, with office towers reaching toward the sky, luxury vehicles filling his garages, and deals worth billions carrying his signature on documents that changed entire industries. But on the morning he signed his first major contract, the one that would launch his career into the stratosphere, he asked his mother to sit right next to him at the conference table. While lawyers and executives waited, he took her hand firmly in his, looked into her tired eyes, and said with emotion choking his voice, "You sacrificed your entire life for me. Every single thing you did was for my benefit. If I'm successful today, if I'm sitting in this chair signing this contract, it's only because of you. Now I want you to do whatever brings you joy. That matters far more than any business achievement I'll ever accomplish. Your happiness is my greatest success." Rosa's eyes filled with tears of pride and happiness, tears that had been building for years of struggle and sacrifice. People urged her to stop selling vegetables and move into a grand home with servants to wait on her hand and foot. They told her she deserved to rest, to enjoy the fruits of her son's success. But she just smiled and responded, "The marketplace fed both my son and me when we had nothing else. Walking away from it would feel like abandoning part of my soul. These people are my family. This place is my home." So every morning, even though her son's wealth could support her comfortably forever, she still wrapped her headscarf and headed to the market. It gave her purpose, kept her connected to her roots, reminded her of where she came from. The other vendors affectionately referred to her as the millionaire's mother, but she always corrected them gently with a warm smile. "I'm just a mother and a vegetable seller, same as I've always been. Money doesn't change who I am inside." When she sat at her stand, Marcus would often stop by to share a bowl of warm soup under the old canvas canopy, just like they did when he was young. In those quiet moments, surrounded by the sounds and smells of the marketplace, he wasn't a millionaire or an influential businessman making decisions that affected thousands of people. He was simply the son of a produce seller, sitting with his mother and enjoying her company. They had discovered true contentment in simplicity until that terrible morning. The morning when an arrogant young woman walked past with contempt radiating from her stare. The morning when a single violent kick destroyed the dignity of honest work. The morning when the entire marketplace stood paralyzed at such cruelty, hidden beneath designer clothes and fancy accessories. Rosa held no anger because she still believed that being poor isn't disgraceful, but being wealthy without compassion absolutely is. She quietly gathered her mud-covered vegetables, examining each one to see what could be saved, her self-respect completely intact. She had no clue that the kick she received that day would eventually demolish that girl's entire world in ways she could never imagine, because very soon, Rosa would enter the estate of a millionaire family, sit beneath glittering crystal lighting fixtures, and teach that young woman a lesson she'd carry for the rest of her existence. Because fate always has a way of returning exactly what we choose to put out into the universe. What goes around truly comes around. Jessica strutted down the polished pavements of the wealthy neighborhood as though the entire planet existed solely to admire her. Her heels clicked with confidence on the expensive stone walkways. Life had taught her one simple rule from an early age: money makes people bow down. She learned this watching her own parents use wealth to control and manipulate others. She never belonged in places like the marketplace where people squeezed past each other among the smell of seafood and shouting vendors. Those places disgusted her, made her feel uncomfortable and superior at the same time. She was born in a luxury apartment with floor-to-ceiling glass and grew up in footwear stamped with the most exclusive brand names that most people could never afford. To Jessica, poor people were just shadows moving through her life, not worth a single moment of consideration. They existed to serve people like her, to make her life more comfortable, nothing more. She once ridiculed a schoolmate for wearing inexpensive shoes, mocking her in front of everyone until the girl cried. She once dumped a boyfriend immediately after he lost his employment, not even giving him a chance to recover. She genuinely believed that to succeed in life, you had to climb over others. Kindness was weakness in her worldview, so when she met Marcus, the owner of one of the largest property development companies in the nation, Jessica thought she'd hit the jackpot. A young, powerful, attractive man, and most crucially, wealthier than anyone she'd ever encountered. He represented everything she wanted: status, money, influence, and a lifestyle that would make everyone envious. She performed her part flawlessly, charming and refined in front of Marcus, laughing at his jokes, agreeing with his opinions, but cold and superior to anyone she considered inferior. Her success wasn't built on talent or effort, but on appearance and cunning, living off other people's fortunes. She'd mastered the art of being exactly what wealthy men wanted to see. Jessica never bothered to learn where Marcus came from. She never asked about his childhood, his struggles, or his family background. In her mind, if someone was a millionaire, they must come from privilege. She assumed he grew up just like her in luxury and comfort. She imagined herself becoming a trophy bride, a queen crowned with romance and riches. Her friends would be so jealous. Her social media would explode with envy. But she had absolutely no idea that Marcus's mother, the woman who raised him through sweat and hunger at the marketplace, still sold vegetables because that was her source of pride. When Jessica kicked Rosa into that filthy puddle, she believed she'd put some low-class woman in her proper place. She felt powerful in that moment, superior and justified. She didn't understand that Kik had already begun her own destruction. 4 days later, Jessica stood before the iron gates of the Chen estate. The towering sculptures and palm trees lined up like an entrance to an exclusive paradise, her heart swelling with arrogance and anticipation. "All I have to do is get through this door, and I've won everything," she thought to herself, adjusting her expensive outfit one more time. "This is it. This is my moment. My entire life has led to this." She walked inside wearing pure ivory silk that cost more than most people earned in 6 months, diamonds glittering on her wrist, catching the afternoon sunlight. She barely allowed the household staff to catch their breath before tossing her hair like royalty claiming her throne. She looked around at the expensive artwork, the marble floors, the luxurious furniture, mentally calculating the cost of everything. And then her expression turned to stone. Her confident smile vanished in an instant. Sitting in the luxurious living room on genuine Italian leather furniture was the exact same woman she had kicked into the mud just days earlier. No scattered vegetables, no dirty water, only those eyes, once gentle, now colder than ice, staring directly at her with recognition. A chill shot down Jessica's spine like ice water. Her legs trembled inside her expensive heels. She felt dizzy, disoriented, like the room was spinning. Her designer sunglasses slipped from her face and crashed on the floor, shattering into pieces just like the fake sophistication she'd used to mask her hollow soul. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the silent room. Marcus, completely unaware of the tension filling the room, smiled proudly and stepped forward with excitement. "Mother, this is Jessica, the woman I want to spend my life with. I've been so excited for you to meet her." The silence became thick and suffocating. You could hear the ticking of the expensive clock on the wall. Rosa looked directly at Jessica, and when she finally spoke, her calm voice cut sharper than any knife. "Character is the only true wealth that money cannot purchase. Lose that, and even draped in gold and covered in diamonds, you remain spiritually bankrupt. You can own the world and still have nothing." Jessica couldn't breathe. Her heart hammered violently in her chest like it was trying to escape. She knew the game had ended. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling. But Marcus still knew nothing. He looked confused, glancing between his mother and Jessica, trying to understand what was happening. And that evening meal would become the most expensive lesson of her entire life, when the truth emerged, and the glittering world she desperately clung to turned to ashes in her hands. Because destiny always finds a way to return what we choose to throw at the world. The sheer ivory curtains in the estate's living room swayed gently with the cool breeze from the climate control system. Light from the enormous crystal chandelier flooded every polished corner, bouncing off the cream-colored Italian leather furniture onto faces tight with stress. The room was designed for comfort and luxury, but right now it felt like a courtroom. But in that moment, what made it difficult to breathe wasn't the luxury surrounding them. It was the suffocating tension wrapping around Jessica's chest. squeezing tighter with each passing second. She stood there, her high heels shaking, ready to snap under the crushing pressure of fear, because the woman she once mocked and kicked at the market was sitting directly in front of her as the mother of the millionaire she was planning to marry. No muddy puddle, no torn clothing, only an elegant outfit that was both graceful and modest, and eyes deep enough to contain an entire lifetime of struggle, sacrifice, and wisdom. Eyes that had seen everything and judged accordingly. Jessica wanted to run, to flee from this room and never look back, but her legs wouldn't cooperate, frozen to the marble floor as if nailed there. Her body refused to obey her desperate mind. Marcus noticed the sudden shift in her face and frowned in confusion. "You've already met my mother? When did this happen?" Jessica parted her lips, but her voice wouldn't emerge. Her throat was completely dry. She managed only a broken whisper. "Met her once, but I had no idea who she was." Rosa folded her hands gently in her lap, never looking away from Jessica. Her gaze was steady, unflinching. "That day you told me that low-class country people should disappear from your sight. You said I was disgusting. Then you kicked me into a puddle and destroyed all my produce that I had spent my entire morning preparing." Marcus's eyes went wide with shock and anger. His face changed completely. The mud stain on his mother's dress that day. Her story about being insulted and attacked by a stranger days earlier suddenly clicked together into a truth that crushed his heart. The woman he thought he loved had hurt the person he loved most in the world. Jessica burst into tears, mascara running down her cheeks. "I didn't mean it. I didn't know who she was. If I had known—" Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making the expensive china rattle. "So if she were just a poor vegetable seller, you think that gives you permission to humiliate her? Does someone need to be important for you to treat them with basic human decency?" The question struck her like a physical blow. Brutal. Undeniable. She had no answer because the truth was obvious. Rosa stood to her feet with dignity. She wasn't physically intimidating, yet her presence made Jessica feel smaller than a speck of dust. She walked slowly to the elaborate dining table set with silver plates and gold-trimmed utensils that probably cost more than a car. Then she placed down a simple basket of fresh green vegetables still clinging to bits of earth, creating a stark contrast with the luxury around them. The room transformed like a film, cutting to a stark contrast. Ultimate luxury on one side, and the purest humility on the other. Two worlds existing in the same space. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying the weight of years. "This is what raised my son. These simple vegetables that you find so disgusting." Jessica stared at the vegetables as though they were garbage, and without thinking, blurted out instinctively, "That cheap stuff has no place next to expensive food. It doesn't belong here." Marcus stared at her, stunned and heartbroken, unable to believe he once cared for this person. He saw her clearly now for the first time. Rosa smiled, a smile more terrifying than any yelling. "You hate these vegetables, but I have never been ashamed of selling them to raise my son. I carried them for kilometers. I washed them with my own hands. I sold them to feed my child. Being poor is not disgraceful. Arrogance is the most pathetic poverty of all." Jessica collapsed to her knees, tears flowing uncontrollably. "Please, I'm so sorry. I was completely wrong. Please forgive me. I'll change, I promise." Rosa placed her hand over the vegetables, hands that once carried her child through a world that tried to destroy her. "Every leaf here represents sweat from the days I had nothing except my little boy in my arms and hope in my heart." Her eyes pierced straight through Jessica's soul. "When you kicked me, you didn't hurt me. I've survived far worse. You only exposed the emptiness inside your own heart." Jessica screamed through her sobbing, desperate now. "Don't make me leave. I genuinely love Marcus, I do." Marcus took a deep breath, steady and cold. His decision was made. "You love the idea of a wealthy man, but you never loved the boy who survived on these vegetables. You never cared to know who I really am." Her strength vanished completely. Every dream, the mansion, the status, the millionaire marriage, the social media posts, the envy of her friends, crumbled into dust right before her eyes. Rosa's voice held no hatred, only the sadness of someone who'd lived long enough to understand human nature. "You can learn from your mistakes, but not by marrying my son. You need to find your redemption somewhere else." She rested her hand on Marcus's shoulder, granting him the strength to do what needed doing. "This woman has no place in this home or in your life." Marcus nodded, pain visible in his eyes, but resolution even stronger. doors swung open, drawing a line between two worlds. The security staff stepped forward professionally. Jessica was escorted outside, each step heavy enough to crush her fate beneath it. As soon as the door closed with a final click, her crying dissolved into the cold night air, replaced by the silent dignity inside the estate. Marcus turned and embraced his mother, holding her tightly. "Mother, you've endured too much. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I should have known better." She wrapped her aged arms around him, voice proud and trembling. "I protected myself my whole life. But today, you protected the honor of this family. That's what matters." They held each other, a bond sealed against every shadow that dared come between them. The basket of vegetables remained on the expensive table, humble yet the most valuable thing in that room. Because that night, it reminded everyone that a person's worth isn't measured by possessions, but by how they treat those less fortunate. Character cannot be bought. After that stormy evening, the Chen estate became surprisingly peaceful. The tension lifted like fog clearing. No more arrogant high heels clicking on marble floors. No more condescending looks or empty lectures about social class and who belongs where. Only the sound of laughter shared between a mother and her son each morning while Rosa chopped vegetables in the estate's enormous kitchen, and Marcus enjoyed the comforting smell of simple corn soup that reminded him of childhood. He kept his childhood promise faithfully. No matter how successful he became, no matter how many meetings filled his calendar or how many millions of dollars were at stake, he would accompany his mother back to the marketplace every week, the place she belonged to, the place she proudly called her second home. People there greeted her not with pity anymore, but with genuine respect and admiration. Every time they watched Marcus help his mother step out of an expensive car, treating her like royalty, they whispered to each other, "That young man is truly wealthy because he never forgets who raised him." That's real class right there. The events of the past had transformed Marcus forever. He learned lessons that no business school could ever teach. He learned that money cannot hide a corrupt heart, and relationships should never be built on appearances or assumptions. And right there in that same marketplace where his mother still worked, fate brought him something wonderful and unexpected. One morning, while helping his mother arrange her fresh vegetables, organizing them by color and freshness, he noticed across the walkway a young woman in a simple white shirt helping her mother, a seafood seller who had slipped on the wet ground. The strong smell of fish didn't bother her at all. She knelt down in the dirty water without hesitation. She simply laughed, a bright laugh with a tiny dimple that made her eyes shine with genuine joy. "Mom, even if you fall, giving up is never an option," she said cheerfully, helping her mother to her feet. "We've been through worse than this, haven't we?" Rosa watched her with interest and smiled, a knowing smile that made Marcus look up to follow her gaze. And right then he saw what his heart had been searching for without even knowing it. A woman who knew how to kneel down to lift up the one who sacrificed for her. A woman who wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Her name was Elena. No silk dresses, no luxury sunglasses, no designer handbags or expensive jewelry. Yet she was the founder of a growing business supplying fresh, quality seafood to upscale restaurants throughout the city. Her company was thriving, respected in the industry. Nobody would ever expect someone in her position to roll up her sleeves and sit in the muddy marketplace to help her mother sell fish. But that was exactly what made her remarkable and different from everyone else Marcus had met. Marcus was drawn to her not by beauty, though she was beautiful in a natural way, but by the heart that honored her roots. He watched her for weeks, noticing how she treated everyone with respect. Their brief conversation soon developed into simple, meaningful dates. A cup of ginger tea from a vendor who remembered their names and asked about their mothers. An afternoon helping their mothers set up their stands and laughing together about childhood memories. A late evening when Elena brought him a basket of fish she'd selected herself, explaining which ones were freshest and why. And one night, sitting on a bench near the marketplace as the sun set, Elena looked into Marcus's eyes and said something nobody had ever said to him. "You can build an empire, Marcus. You can own towers and companies and have your name on buildings. But nothing is more precious than keeping your mother close and honoring where you came from. That's the real measure of success." Those words touched the old wound deep inside his chest, the one left by Jessica's cruelty. He realized Elena was someone he could trust with his entire life. Someone who understood what truly mattered. Time passed, seasons changed, and what Jessica could never earn with wealth or glamour or manipulation, Elena won with pure sincerity and genuine character. 14 months later, their wedding wasn't the typical extravagant display of the elite with hundreds of guests they barely knew. No press photographers, no crowds of strangers trying to get a glimpse of luxury, only the people they genuinely loved and who loved them back. The fish seller, the vegetable vendors, the rice stand owner, the security guard at the marketplace entrance, the tea seller who knew their orders by heart, all sitting together under strings of lights, raising glasses filled with homemade drinks to celebrate genuine happiness. Elena wore a simple wedding dress that her mother had helped her choose. Nothing extravagant or attention-seeking. Walking down a path lined with banana leaves and wildflowers, once symbols of humble living, now more beautiful than any red carpet could ever be. Rosa herself placed a small sprig of fresh mint in her daughter-in-law's hair with trembling fingers, a symbol of memory and perseverance. With a trembling voice full of emotion, she said, "Not everyone from the marketplace is poor, and not every wealthy person has a rich heart. You proved that, my daughter." Marcus hugged his mother, eyes glistening with tears he didn't try to hide. He knew life was finally giving her the joy she deserved after years of struggle. As applause echoed through the marketplace and happiness filled the air like music, Elena squeezed Marcus's hand and whispered so only he could hear, "Happiness isn't about how much we own, but about who we choose to walk beside through this life." Marcus held her warm hands, smelling faintly of fish and the ocean, but worth more than diamonds or gold, and smiled wider than he had in years. That day, the entire marketplace witnessed a victory not of luxury, but of dignity over arrogance, genuine affection over money, and gratitude over pride. Because in the end, the truest form of wealth is loving the one who once shared your struggles and never forgetting where you came from. Night settled gently over the familiar marketplace like a warm blanket. Warm golden lights glowing above every stand, illuminating every hard-working face filled with love and celebration. Today wasn't just Marcus and Elena's wedding day. It was the day the entire marketplace stood tall with pride, celebrating one of their own. Drums, laughter, and conversation rose into the air, blending with the scent of fresh fish and damp vegetables, the scent of an honest life, a fragrance money could never buy or replicate. In the midst of that joy, Rosa watched her son dance with his bride under strings of lights stretching from one end of the marketplace to the other, creating a canopy of stars. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Her smile carried the grace of someone who has tasted enough bitterness to understand that peace is the most precious gift life can offer. She remembered the days. She walked miles beneath scorching sun and heavy rain, her feet bleeding but never stopping. She remembered the skinny little boy, Marcus, running behind her with his bright smile, grinning just because he had a full meal that day. All those struggles, all those tears, all those prayers had transformed into sparkling lights in tonight's celebration. Marcus walked over, offering his hand just like when he was small and needed her guidance. "Mom, are you tired? Let me help you walk. You've been on your feet all day." She smiled, taking his hand. "I've already walked through the darkest roads imaginable. From now on, my son will lead the way, and I'll walk beside you proudly." Elena and her seafood-selling mother came forward, both women with tears in their eyes. The two mothers held hands, hands smelling of the marketplace of labor and hard work, but never once lacking love for their children. The seafood seller whispered with emotion, "They're happy today because you raised a son who knows how to honor his mother. You taught him well." Rosa shook her head gently, smiling even wider. "They're happy because we never gave up, even when life tried to break us into pieces. We survived together." At the edge of the marketplace, partially hidden in shadows, Jessica stood silently watching everything unfold. No glamour, no sunglasses, no designer handbag, only regret and eyes filled with tears at the sight of what she'd lost forever. A single tear dropped into her palm, burning away the last remains of her pride. She whispered to herself, voice breaking, "So this is what truly matters. This is what I threw away." But she didn't step forward because Jessica finally understood a painful truth. Some things, once thrown away, can never be reclaimed, no matter how much you regret it. The celebration continued into the night. People toasted with cups of water instead of champagne, shared simple dishes instead of extravagant feasts prepared by famous chefs. Yet nothing felt missing because here people gave without expecting anything back. People remembered to be grateful for what they had. People cherished where they came from and who helped them along the way. Marcus raised his cup high, looking straight into his mother's eyes with all the love in his heart. Today, I didn't just marry my wife. I also honored the very roots of my life, the foundation that made me who I am. Rosa nodded, responding softly with tears streaming down her cheeks.
And I get to witness your heart finding another heart just as worthy.
Just as pure. Applause erupted across the marketplace, not just for the wedding, but for a belief they all shared. Good people meet good people. Real love finds real love. And dignity always defeats arrogance in the end. The night deepened, stars appearing above them, but every smile, every gaze here shone like lights that would never burn out. When the final song played, Marcus gently brought his mother's and wife's hands together, joining them. Mother, you are the greatest gift of my life. Because of you, I learned this truth. Love isn't in what we own, but in how we treat one another. That lesson is worth more than any fortune. Rosa embraced them both tightly, holding her past and her future together. And in that embrace, a new family was born, gentle, peaceful, overflowing with joy. No diamonds needed to prove anything. No flashy wealth required to impress anyone, because a heart that values love is already the richest heart in the world. Money can buy expensive clothing, but it can never buy a kind heart. You may walk proudly in high heels, but never step on someone else's dignity. We don't choose where we're born, but we can choose how we treat one another. Remember, the people you look down on today might be the very ones you look up to tomorrow. Life has a way of teaching us these lessons. Where are you watching this story from? Comment your location below: Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, Houston, Detroit, Phoenix, or maybe Manchester. Sydney, Toronto, Paris, Mumbai, Lagos, Johannesburg, Dublin. We'd love to see how far this story has traveled across the world and touched hearts everywhere. What do you think of this ending? Leave a short message like, "I love you, Mom. I will never forget you." Or, "Thank you, Mom, for everything you sacrificed for me." Sometimes just one sentence can make a mother happy for a lifetime. Let her know she matters. Don't forget to like this video if it touched your heart and reminded you of what truly matters. Share it to remind someone that dignity is the greatest wealth we have. Subscribe so you never miss a story that touches the soul and reminds us of our humanity. Thank you for watching to the end. You are now part of this journey of spreading love and kindness across the world.